We live in an age of abundance, yet many of us feel impoverished in spirit. The shelves are full, the screens are bright, the schedules are overflowing, and still the heart is restless. People lie awake at night, staring into the blue light of their phones, wondering why their minds won't stop racing. They walk into work carrying the invisible weight of worry, or sit across from loved ones feeling strangely alone. The modern promise was comfort and convenience. But instead, many find themselves trapped in stress, anxiety, and a craving for control that never seems satisfied. This is not a failure of individual strength. It is the silent struggle of a generation that has been taught to chase faster, to want more, to never stop. When the mind whispers, if you just think harder, if you just plan better, if you just push a little more, you will finally be safe. It sounds convincing. But the truth is harsher. The more we try to outrun our discomfort with endless thought, the more it clings to us. The more we grasp its certainty, the more uncertain we feel. Here lies the turning point. What if the way out is not through more effort, but through letting go? What if the door to peace has been here all along, waiting to be opened not with force, but with awareness? This is where the wisdom of the Buddha, passed down through centuries, speaks directly into our modern wounds. His teachings are not abstract philosophy. They are a map for the restless mind, a gentle medicine for the anxious heart. Think of the constant noise in your head as a crowded room. Thoughts push and shove, voices argue, stories replay. You may believe that peace will come once the room is finally silent. But the silence never arrives on its own. Buddhist wisdom suggests something radical. You do not need to chase silence. You only need to recognize that you are not the noise, you are the space that holds it. Within that space, there is already freedom, already calm. The purpose of this journey is not to escape life, but to return to it more fully. Stress, money problems, broken relationships, and endless worry will still arise. They are the first arrows of life-unavoidable pains that touch every human being. But the second arrow, the suffering we add by our resistance, our self-criticism, our overthinking this arrow can be avoided. We can learn not to fire at Dot in the next chapters. We will walk together through 10 of the most common struggles of modern life: stress, money, relationships, anxiety, and more. Each struggle will be held up to the light of ancient teachings. Each wound will be met with a balm of wisdom, told in stories, metaphors, and practices that speak directly to the human heart. These are not rules to obey. They are invitations to see differently, to breathe more deeply, to remember that beneath all the noise, you are already whole. The promise of this journey is not perfection. It is not a life without pain. The promise is freedom, the freedom to live with clarity instead of confusion, compassion instead of judgment, peace instead of constant struggle. This freedom begins not tomorrow, not in some distant place, but here in this very moment. And as we begin, let us step gently into the first pain that so many know too well. The endless loops of thought that steal our rest and cloud our days. There is a promise our minds keep whispering. It says, if you just think harder, if you plan every detail, if you anticipate every danger, then you will finally feel safe. At first, this voice sounds reasonable. After all, thought has given humanity tools, conventions, and solutions. It has built bridges and cured diseases. Yet, when thought takes the throne in our inner lives, when it becomes the master instead of the servant, it turns on us. The very tool meant to protect us becomes the prison that holds us. You know the experience. You lay down in bed, exhausted from a long day. You want nothing more than sleep. Yet the mind refuses. It replays the awkward thing you said at work. It reimagines how you could have handled that argument differently. It leaps forward into tomorrow's tasks and next week's deadlines, rehearsing every possibility. Hours pass, and your body aches for rest, but your mind keeps spinning. In the morning, you rise tired, not because of physical labor, but because of the relentless effort of thought that never switched off. Overthinking wears many masks. Sometimes it is worry, circling around the same fear again and again. Sometimes it is analysis, breaking apart every past decision as if dissecting it will undo regret. Sometimes it is fantasy, planning every possible future scenario, hoping one will grant a sense of certainty. Beneath these masks lies the same driver, fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, fear of loss. The mind believes that if it never stops, it can build a fortress of safety. But the fortress is an illusion. Life remains unpredictable. Relationships end. Jobs change. Health wavers. No matter how much we plan, we cannot control the tides of existence. And so, the more we try, the more anxious we become. We pile thought upon thought, like bricks stacked higher and higher, until the wall collapses under its own weight. The ancient teachings of the Buddha address this directly. He did not condemn thought. He used thought skillfully to teach and to guide, but he warned against clinging to thought as the path to liberation. True wisdom, he said, comes from seeing clearly, not from endlessly thinking. There is a profound difference. Seeing is simple, direct, and freeing. Thinking, when driven by craving, is tangled, repetitive, and exhausting. Consider the parable of the poisoned arrow. A man is struck, and instead of allowing the healer to pull it out, he insists on knowing who shot it, from what tribe, with what kind of wood, and what kind of poison. By the time he has his answers, it is too late. We live like that man. We suffer, but instead of tending to the wound directly, we chase explanations, theories, and predictions. We demand to know why before we allow healing. And in doing so, we miss the chance to be free. The path of Buddhist wisdom is not about answering every question. It is about stepping out of the prison of questions altogether. When we notice the mind spinning its endless loops, we can pause. We can ask gently, is this thought necessary? Is it helping me, or is it keeping me trapped? Often, the simple act of noticing is enough to create a gap, a small space where awareness shines through dot in that space. Something remarkable happens. The body speaks. Long before the mind starts racing, the body whispers its unease. Shallow breaths, a tight chest, a clenched jaw, a restless stomach. These sensations are not enemies. They are messages. They say, something is unresolved. Something needs your presence, not your planning. When we listen to the body, when we soften the breath, we interrupt the cycle of overthinking. Instead of building a mental fortress, we return to the simple truth of this moment. Try it now. Take a slow, deliberate breath. Notice the air as it enters your nose, cool against the skin. Feel your chest rise. Pause for a brief moment, then release. Feel the warmth as it leaves your lips. In this simple act, you are no longer lost in tomorrow. You are here. The mind may try to pull you back into its maze, but the breath is an anchor. Each time you return, the maze loses a little of its power. Still, the mind will not surrender easily. It will insist that thinking is the only way to be safe. It will say, if you let go, something bad will happen. Here lies the deeper truth. This craving for certainty is not unique to you. It is a universal human longing, called tanha in the ancient texts, the thirst that fuels suffering. It is the desire not only for objects and pleasures, but for control, predictability, and permanence in a world that offers none. This thirst cannot be satisfied. Like drinking salt water, the more we consume, the more parched we become. The mind thinks it is rehearsing safety, but it is only rehearsing suffering. To see this clearly is the beginning of freedom. Freedom does not come from erasing all thoughts. It comes from recognizing their nature. They are not commands. They are not who you are. They are passing clouds in the vast sky of awareness. Imagine sitting by a river. Leaves float past on the surface. Some are bright, some are dark. Some remind you of joy, others of pain. If you reach out to grab them, you are pulled into the current, tossed and turned by the stream. But if you sit quietly, watching, you see that the leaves pass on their own. The river does not need your effort to keep moving. Your thoughts are those leaves. Awareness is the riverbank. You do not need to chase every leaf. You can watch and let them drift away. This shift from identification to observation is at the heart of the path. It does not happen overnight. Years of habit carve deep grooves in the mind. Worry practiced daily becomes worry mastered. Rumination rehearsed again and again becomes second nature. This is the karma of the mind, not punishment, but habit reinforced by repetition. Yet, every moment of awareness interrupts the cycle. Every time you catch yourself and say, this is just a thought, you carve a new groove, a path that leads not into the maze, but out of it. Asterisk, the journey requires patience. At first, awareness feels fragile, like a candle flickering in the wind. But with practice, it steadies. The loops of thought still arise, but they no longer bind you. You see them, you bow to them, and you let them go. Gradually, the restless loops lose their power. The modern world will not stop demanding your attention. Notifications will keep flashing. Deadlines will keep looming. Expectations will keep knocking at your door. But you are not powerless. You can learn to step back, to clear the clutter of unnecessary thoughts, to create space. Space for breath. Space for peace. Space to remember that you are not the noise. You are the awareness that holds it all. And as this awareness grows, a new freedom dawns. You begin to notice that you no longer need to chase certainty. You no longer need to solve every hypothetical future. You discover that the present moment, simple and unadorned, is enough. This is not an escape. It is a homecoming. This is the invitation of the teachings, to step out of the loops of overthinking, to rest in awareness, and to trust that life unfolds not according to your control, but according to its own mysterious rhythm. And within that rhythm, you can find peace. The mind, when caught in its own loops, is like a restless child. It pulls on your sleeve. It demands attention. It invents stories. What if this happens? What if that goes wrong? Did you notice how they looked at you? Shouldn't you have done more? At first, you may respond to each demand. You try to calm it with more thought, with more planning, with more explanations. But the more you respond, the louder it becomes. It is never satisfied, because it cannot be satisfied. This restlessness is not your fault. It is the inheritance of every human being. The Buddha described the mind as a monkey, leaping from branch to branch, never still. Thousands of years later, the description still fits. The monkey mind swings from regret to fear, from desire to doubt. It never tires. But here is the secret. You do not need to silence the monkey. You only need to stop mistaking its chatter for truth. When you observe the mind, instead of obeying it, you begin to see patterns. Perhaps you notice that every time you feel uncertain, the mind rushes in with a storm of plans. Or that every time you feel lonely, the mind replays memories of past mistakes, as if punishing you for being alone. Or that when you feel fear, the mind paints worst-case scenarios with startling detail. The mind is not cruel. It is trying to protect you. But it protects clumsily, like a guard dog that barks at every passing shadow. The way forward is not to fight the dog, but to gently train it. In Buddhist practice, this training begins with mindfulness. Mindfulness does not mean forcing thoughts to stop. It means noticing them, naming them, and allowing them to pass without clinging. When a worry arises, you can say softly in your heart, worry. When a memory arises, memory. When a plan arises, planning. This simple naming loosens the grip. The thought is no longer a command. It is just an event, like a sound or a breeze. Over time, this practice transforms your relationship with thought. Imagine living in a cluttered attic, filled with boxes stacked to the ceiling. You stumble in the dark, tripping over objects you barely recognize. The clutter feels overwhelming. But then, you begin to clear one box at a time. You don't need to empty the attic overnight. Each small act of clearing creates space. Light enters. Breathing becomes easier. The same is true of the mind. Each time you meet a thought with awareness, you sweep a little dust away. The Buddha spoke often of this sweeping. He compared the practice to tending a garden. If you water the seeds of fear, they grow. If you water the seeds of anger, they grow. But if you water the seeds of peace, compassion, and clarity, those too will grow. Every moment of attention is a choice of which seed to water. Overthinking waters the seeds of anxiety. Mindfulness waters the seeds of peace. The soil of the mind responds faithfully to what you plant. This does not mean you should never think. Thought is a gift when used wisely. It helps you plan a journey, solve a problem, create art, or share love. But thought ceases to serve when it becomes obsessive. Wisdom is knowing when to use thought and when to rest in silence. It is like using fire. A small flame warms and cooks. An uncontrolled blaze destroys. The same fire, but two very different outcomes. One of the deepest traps of overthinking is the second arrow. Life shoots the first arrow: pain, loss, disappointment. But we shoot the second arrow ourselves. We add judgment. This should not have happened. I should be different. Life should be fair. These judgments sting more than the original pain. They turn a moment of suffering into days, weeks, or years of torment. When we learn to stop firing the second arrow, life becomes lighter. Pain still comes, but it passes. It no longer chains us. Think of a time you made a mistake. Perhaps you missed a deadline, or hurt someone you loved, or made a poor choice. The mistake was the first arrow. But what followed? Hours of self-criticism. Days of replaying the event. Nights of shame. That was the second arrow, and it cut deeper than the first. The teachings invite us to pause at the first arrow, to feel the sting, to acknowledge the pain, but to resist adding the extra wound of judgment. In that pause lies freedom. This freedom grows when we accept that life is uncertain. The mind craves certainty, but reality does not grant it. No one can promise that tomorrow will be safe, that love will last, that health will remain. Trying to guarantee certainty through thought is like trying to hold water in your fist. The tighter you grip, the more it slips away. Real peace comes not from controlling life, but from trusting life, even when it is uncertain. Trust does not mean blind optimism. It means living fully in the present moment, responding wisely, and letting go of the rest. When fear whispers, "What if it all goes wrong?" you can answer, "Then I will meet it when it comes." When regret whispers, "You should have done better," you can answer, "I did what I could with what I knew." This is not resignation. It is courage, the courage to be present with reality as it is, not as the mind demands it to be. The breath is the simplest and most powerful tool for this courage. The breath cannot exist in the past or the future. It can only exist here now. When the mind spins, return to the breath. Notice its rhythm. Notice the rise and fall of the belly. Notice the pause between inhale and exhale. With each breath, you are reminded, this moment is enough. You are alive. You are here. And in this here, nothing is missing. As you practice, you may begin to hear another voice beneath the noise. not the chatter of the inner narrator, but a quieter whisper. It does not demand. It does not argue. It simply says, be still, be kind, be here. This voice is not separate from you. It is the deeper self, the awareness that existed before thought. The more you listen, the more it guides you. It leads you not into endless loops, but into stillness. Stillness is not emptiness. It is not a void. It is a fullness beyond words. In stillness, you realize that peace was never something to be earned by solving every problem. Peace was always here, hidden beneath the clutter of thought. Like the sky hidden by clouds, it was waiting for you to stop chasing, to stop grasping, to simply look up. This realization does not erase challenges. Bills still come. Conflicts still arise. The body still ages. But your relationship to these realities changes. You meet them not as storms to be feared, but as waves to be ridden. You no longer drown in the endless current of thought. You float, supported by awareness itself. And slowly, compassion begins to grow. You realize that every person you meet is also trapped in their own loops. The driver who cuts you off, the coworker who snaps, the partner who withdraws, they are not enemies. They are fellow travelers, caught in the same restless search for safety. When you see this, anger softens. Judgment fades. You feel a kinship, a shared humanity. Compassion flows naturally, not because you force it, but because you understand that this compassion extends to yourself. You forgive yourself for the years spent overthinking. You forgive the nights lost to worry, the days clouded by rumination. You forgive the mistakes that were only attempts to be safe. In this forgiveness, a new life opens, one not ruled by the restless promise of thought, but guided by awareness, presence, and peace. And as you stand on this threshold, you sense the next step. Overthinking is not the only wound of modern life. It is the doorway into many others. The stress of constant striving, the weight of money worries, the ache of broken relationships, the heaviness of anxiety. Each of these wounds calls for healing. Each can be met with the same wisdom. Step by step, arrow by arrow, we walk this path together. Stress is the hidden anthem of our time. It hums beneath the surface of every crowded commute, every buzzing inbox, every hurried meal eaten in the car. Ask almost anyone how they are, and the answer comes quickly. Busy, tired, stressed. It has become so normal that many of us treat it as inevitable, like the weather. But stress is not the weather. It is the storm we carry inside, a storm that never passes because we never put down the weight that feeds it. We wake with it before dawn, the heart already racing at the thought of what must be done. We carry it through traffic, through meetings, through endless lists that never seem to shrink. We lie down with it at night, and even in sleep it lingers, shaping our dreams into restless rehearsals of tomorrow. Stress has become the constant background music of life, and for many, silence feels strange, even threatening. What is stress, truly? At its core, it is the tension between what is and what we want to be. It is the gap between reality and expectation. The body experiences it as tightened muscles, shallow breath, a clenched jaw, a restless heartbeat. The mind experiences it as worry, as urgency, as the conviction that something must change right now or disaster will follow. Stress is not just a mental state. It is a whole body rebellion against the present moment. The Buddha understood this long before the word stress existed. He called it dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness, the restless discontent woven into existence. Stress is dukkha in its modern clothing. It arises from craving, from the constant grasping for more, from the refusal to rest with what is. We believe, if I just finish this project, then I'll relax. If I just pay off this debt, then I'll breathe. If I just fix this relationship, then I'll be at peace. But when one fire is put out, another flares up. The cycle never ends because the cause is not out there. It is within. Imagine carrying a heavy sack on your back. You do not question it. You simply assume this is what life requires. But then someone asks, what is inside the sack? You open it and discover stones. Some were placed there by others. Expectations, cultural pressures, family demands. Some you picked up yourself. Perfectionism, ambition, fear. You carry them all, convinced they are necessary. Yet when you look closely, most of them are not. Stress is this sack of stones, and the path of practice invites us to set it down. This does not mean abandoning responsibility. Bills must still be paid, children still raised, work still done. But responsibility and stress are not the same. Responsibility is meeting what needs to be done with clarity. Stress is the extra weight we add, the constant story that it is never enough, that it must be perfect, that disaster is always near. Stress is the second arrow of daily life. There is a story told of a monk who noticed a farmer hurrying past the monastery every morning, sweat on his brow, worry etched into his face. One day the monk asked, "Why do you run so fast, friend?" The farmer replied, "Because I have so much to do. I must tend the fields, feed the animals, repair the fence, and earn enough to survive. There is no time to rest." The monk nodded and said, "It seems to me you are carrying your whole farm on your shoulders. Why not let the farm rest where it is and simply take care of what is in front of you?" The farmer laughed at first, but as he walked away, he realized the truth. The weight was not the work itself, but the way he carried it. This is the truth for us as well. Work itself is not stress. It is the constant resistance, the mental pushing and pulling that creates the suffering. The Buddha's invitation is radical, to meet each task without the story of too much or not enough, to breathe into the moment as it is, not as we demand it to be, to rest even while working. One way to begin is through the body. When stress arises, the body tightens first. The shoulders rise, the stomach knots, the jaw locks. By softening the body, we soften the mind. Try pausing in the middle of a stressful moment. Take one conscious breath. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your teeth. Feel your feet against the ground. This simple return interrupts the storm. It reminds you that you are here, alive, safe in this breath. Another way is through perspective. Stress convinces us that everything is urgent, that life is a series of emergencies. But most of the time, this is not true. The email can wait an hour. The dishes can wait until after dinner. The phone call can be returned tomorrow. Urgency is often a trick of the mind, not a truth of the moment. When we question the story of urgency, stress loses much of its power. The teachings also remind us of impermanence. Every stress, no matter how sharp, passes. The argument ends. The deadline arrives and is forgotten. The storm breaks and the sky clears. Stress thrives on the illusion that the moment will last forever. But when we remember impermanence, we find courage. We say, "This too shall pass," and it does. Still, there is a deeper level. Stress is not only about tasks, it is about identity. We cling to the idea of who we must be, the perfect worker, the perfect parent, the perfect partner. We measure ourselves against impossible standards. And each time we fall short, stress surges. The path of freedom begins when we see that these identities are stories. Useful at times, but not who we truly are. Beneath them lies a spacious awareness that does not need to prove itself. In that space, stress dissolves. This awareness is not something to earn. It is already here, like the sky behind the clouds. Stress is the cloud. Awareness is the sky. The practice is simply to notice, again and again, that the sky has never left. Even in the middle of the storm, it is present, vast and untouched. As we remember this, we find that stress is not a life sentence. It is a habit, a pattern, a story told by the mind and body. And like all habits, it can be changed, not by force, but by gentle attention. By breathing into the body, questioning the story, remembering impermanence, and resting in awareness. This does not make life effortless. The challenges remain, but the weight shifts. You carry them differently. You discover that peace is not found after the storm, but within it. You learn to walk calmly, even as the winds blow. This is the gift of the teachings. Not a life free of stress, but a life free within stress. And as we walk deeper into this truth, another dimension of modern suffering reveals itself. Stress is heavy, but it often arises from something even more daunting. The struggle with money, the constant fear of not having enough, of losing what we have, of being left behind. Money touches every corner of modern life, and with it comes one of the greatest sources of pain. Money is one of the loudest engines of stress in modern life. It hums in the background of almost every decision. Should I take this job or that one? Can I afford this house, this school, this medical bill? Will there be enough for retirement, for emergencies, for my children? Even those who seem secure are haunted by the question, what if I lose it all? Stress and money are tied together like vines, twisting around the heart, squeezing tighter with every new demand. But money itself is not the enemy. It is paper, metal, numbers on a screen. The suffering comes from the stories we attach to it, stories of worth, of safety, of identity. We tell ourselves, if I have enough, I will finally rest. If I don't, I will be nothing. In this way, money becomes not just a tool for survival, but a measure of our very existence. No wonder it creates so much stress. The Buddha saw this craving in all its forms. He called it tanha, thirst, not only for food or wealth, but for the illusion of permanence, the dream that possessions will shield us from loss. Yet no possession, no amount of money, can stop impermanence. Rich or poor, every life ends. Rich or poor, every human heart longs for the same peace. When we pin our sense of worth to money, we are like a person clinging to a rope made of sand. It cannot hold us still. Money is real in daily life. Bills do not vanish when we meditate. Children need to eat. Families need shelter. So how do we live wisely in a world where money matters, without being crushed by the stress it brings? The answer is not to reject money, nor to worship it, but to see it clearly as a tool, not a master. Think of a farmer who uses a plow. A plow is necessary to till the soil, but the farmer does not confuse the plow with the harvest. In the same way, money is a tool that helps cultivate the conditions of life. But it is not the harvest itself. The harvest is peace, connection, meaning. When we mistake the tool for the harvest, stress is inevitable. There is a story from the teachings of the Buddha. A wealthy man came to him, troubled despite his riches. "I have everything," he said, "yet my mind is never at ease. I fear losing what I have. I want more, but I am never satisfied." The Buddha listened and then replied, "A man who is thirsty and drinks salt water will never quench his thirst." In the same way, craving wealth cannot bring peace. To find peace, you must learn contentment. Contentment does not mean laziness or neglect. It means recognizing when enough is enough. It means using money wisely, but not letting it define your heart. In a culture that celebrates endless growth, contentment is a radical act. It is saying, I will not measure my life by accumulation. I will measure it by peace. This perspective softens stress. Instead of chasing more, you begin to appreciate what is here. Instead of fearing loss, you learn to trust that life will provide what is needed, even if not always what is wanted. Gratitude becomes a shield against stress. Each day you look around and notice the food on the table, the roof overhead, the laughter of a friend. These are wealth beyond numbers, and they are free in the present moment. The Buddha also taught generosity as an antidote to stress about money. When we give, even a little, we loosen the grip of fear. We discover that our worth is not tied to what we hoard, but to what we share. Generosity transforms the story of money. It turns it from a symbol of scarcity into a channel of connection. And in that connection, stress dissolves. Of course, generosity does not erase practical realities. We still budget, plan, save. But the difference is in the heart. Instead of approaching money with panic, we approach it with balance. Instead of letting it dominate our lives, we place it in its rightful place, as one part of life, not the whole of it. This balance grows when we remember impermanence. Every financial storm passes. Every bill once paid is forgotten. Every worry about the future fades into the present. Stress convinces us that money is everything, that one mistake will ruin us forever. But when we look back, we see how many storms we have already survived. We see that life continues, even when the numbers in the bank rise and fall. And perhaps most importantly, we see that our deepest needs are not financial. They are spiritual. We long for safety, but safety is not found in numbers, it is found in trust. We long for connection, but connection is not bought, it is cultivated. We long for meaning, but meaning cannot be purchased, it is lived. Stress about money fades when we shift our focus from what we fear losing to what can never be taken. Awareness, compassion, love. Still, money is only one thread in the web of stress. For many, the greatest weight is not financial, but relational, the pain of strained connections, the loneliness of distance, the heartbreak of conflict. Stress thrives in relationships, where expectations clash, where needs go unmet, where love turns into misunderstanding. And so, as we step forward, we turn from the stress of survival to the stress of the heart, the challenge of human connection. Relationships are both our greatest source of joy and our greatest source of suffering. A single word from someone we love can lift us higher than any achievement. A single word from that same person can cut us more deeply than any enemy. We long for connection, yet so often we find conflict. We crave intimacy, yet so often we feel alone, even when we are not that in the modern world. This pain has only grown sharper. Technology connects us with more people than ever before, yet many feel more isolated than ever. Social media shows curated smiles, polished moments, and the illusion of perfect love. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, couples argue, families drift apart, friendships dissolve in silence. We are surrounded by people and still haunted by loneliness. Why is love so hard? Why do relationships that begin with such warmth end in cold distance? Why do families that share the same roof feel like strangers? At the root lies expectation. We carry silent contracts into every relationship. You will complete me. You will understand me. You will never hurt me. These contracts are unwritten, often unspoken, but they are powerful. And when the other person inevitably fails to meet them, we feel betrayed. The Buddha saw clearly that attachment brings suffering. Not attachment to people themselves, but to the idea of what they should be. We do not love others as they are. We love the image of them we hold in our minds. When they act outside that image, stress and disappointment erupt. In this way, relationships become less about meeting and more about controlling, less about seeing and more about demanding. Think of two people standing face to face, each holding a mirror. Instead of seeing each other, they see only their own reflection. They argue not with the real person before them, but with the image in their own mind. This is why so many conflicts feel endless. We are not listening to each other. We are listening to our expectations, The path to healing begins with presence. To truly see another person, we must put down the mirror. We must meet them as they are in this moment, not as we wish them to be. This requires courage, because it means letting go of control. It means accepting that we cannot make another person our source of perfect happiness. They will disappoint us, as we will disappoint them. But within that acceptance lies freedom. One of the Buddha's central teachings was on compassion, karuna. Compassion does not mean tolerating abuse or neglect. It means seeing the humanity in the other, even when they struggle. It means recognizing that their anger is often their own suffering spilling over. Their coldness is often their own fear hiding. When we look beneath the surface of behavior, we see a fellow traveler burdened by their own wounds. This vision softens our heart. There is a story of a monk insulted by a passerby. The words were harsh, meant to wound. The monk did not respond with anger. Instead, he asked gently, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The passerby answered, "It remains with the giver." The monk nodded. "In the same way, I do not accept your anger. It remains with you." This story is not about superiority, but about freedom. When we stop grasping at every word, every insult, we free ourselves from needless suffering. Modern relationships often falter because we treat love as possession. We say, "my partner," "my child," "my friend." The word "my" carries weight. It suggests ownership, control, permanence. But love is not ownership. Love is a living thing, fragile and fluid. It thrives when we nurture it with care, and it withers when we try to cage it. The Buddha invited us to love without clinging, to hold others not as possessions, but as precious beings walking beside us for a time. This does not mean detachment in the cold sense. It does not mean indifference. It means loving fully, but with open hands. Imagine holding a bird in your palm. If you squeeze too tightly, you harm it. If you open your hand, it may fly, but your palm remains warm from its presence. True love is like this, open, free, and without demand. Stress in relationships also arises from communication or the lack of it. Words spoken in haste can ignite fires that burn for years. Words left unsaid can create a silence heavier than stone. Buddhist practice offers a remedy: right speech. Right speech is not simply about avoiding lies. It is about speaking truth in a way that heals rather than harms. Before speaking, we can ask, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? If the answer is yes, the words become bridges instead of weapons. Listening is as important as speaking. True listening means quieting the inner narrator that constantly judges and prepares replies. It means offering our full presence as if nothing else in the world matters more than this moment of hearing. When we listen this way, walls soften. The other feels seen, not argued with. Many conflicts dissolve not because solutions are found, but because someone finally feels heard. Relationships are also tested by the storms of life: illness, loss, financial hardship, the weight of daily responsibilities. In these moments, stress can turn partners into enemies, families into battlegrounds. But these storms can also deepen connection when met with shared compassion. To sit beside a loved one in silence during grief, to hold their hand without trying to fix them, is an act of profound love. In these moments, we embody the teaching of interbeing. Your suffering is not separate from mine. Your healing is not separate from mine. Loneliness is another form of relational pain. Many live surrounded by people, yet feel unseen. The cause is not the absence of company, but the absence of connection. True connection requires vulnerability, the willingness to be seen as we are, without masks. But vulnerability feels risky, and so many hide behind roles, achievements, or distractions. The paradox is that, in hiding to avoid rejection, we create the very loneliness we fear. The practice of mindfulness can help here as well. When we are present with ourselves, we become more present with others. We drop the need to perform. We bring our authentic self, and in doing so, we invite authenticity in return. Slowly, loneliness gives way to intimacy, not because we found the perfect person, but because we learn to show up fully. Forgiveness is another vital medicine. Every relationship involves hurt. Some wounds are small, others deep. Holding on to resentment is like carrying hot coals, hoping to throw them at another, but burning ourselves in the process. Forgiveness is not forgetting or excusing. It is choosing to put down the coals. It is saying, I will not carry this pain any longer. In releasing resentment, we release stress. At the deepest level, relationships are mirrors of our own mind. The anger we feel toward another often reveals anger we hold toward ourselves. The love we give reveals love we have uncovered within. When we cultivate inner peace, it radiates outward, transforming our connections. In this way, the most powerful gift we can give to any relationship is our own practice. And yet, even with practice, even with compassion, relationships will bring pain. People will leave, through choice or through death. Misunderstandings will arise. Love will not always be returned. The Buddha did not promise otherwise, but he offered a way to hold this pain without being crushed by it. He showed that even in loss, love does not vanish, it transforms. It becomes compassion for others who suffer. It becomes wisdom that guides us forward. As we walk this path, we begin to see relationships not as chains that bind us, but as teachers that free us. Every joy, every heartbreak, every connection, every loss becomes part of the journey. Each one points us back to the truth that love, when freed from clinging, is boundless. And as we pause here, having explored the stress of human connection, we begin to sense the next challenge waiting in the shadows. For many, the pain is not only in relationships with others, but in the relationship with themselves, the quiet battle with anxiety, the restless fear that lingers even in silence. And as we pause here, having explored the stress of human connection, we begin to sense the next challenge waiting in the shadows. For many, the pain is not only in relationships with others, but in the relationship with themselves, the quiet battle with anxiety, the restless fear that lingers even in silence. Anxiety within relationships is often the hidden undercurrent. It shows up as jealousy, fear of abandonment, constant doubt, or the desperate need for reassurance. You may know the feeling, waiting for a reply to a message and feeling your chest tighten with each passing minute, or replaying a conversation in your head, analyzing every word, convinced that you've said the wrong thing, or fearing that if you show your true self, love will vanish. This is not just stress. It is anxiety woven into the fabric of intimacy. Why does this happen? At its core, anxiety in relationships stems from the same source as overthinking and stress, the craving for certainty. We want guarantees. We want love that never changes, a bond that never falters. But relationships exist in the living flow of impermanence. People change, circumstances shift, feelings rise and fall. To demand permanence from what is fluid is to set ourselves up for fear. The Buddha taught that clinging leads to suffering. Nowhere is this clearer than in love. When we cling to a person as our source of identity, safety, or happiness, we hand them the key to our peace. Every smile becomes a lifeline. Every silence becomes a threat. This dependence turns love into fear. Anxiety becomes the shadow of attachment. But there is another way. True love, in the light of Buddhist wisdom, is built not on possession, but on freedom. It does not say, "You complete me." It says, "I see you, and I honor your path, even when it differs from mine." It does not say, "Never leave me." It says, I will cherish you in this moment, knowing that all things change. When love is rooted in freedom, anxiety begins to soften. This does not mean cold detachment. It means bringing awareness into the relationship, moment by moment. When anxiety arises, instead of acting on it sending a desperate message, picking a needless fight, withdrawing in fear, we pause. We breathe. We name it. This is anxiety. This is fear of loss. By naming it, we create distance. We remember that the feeling is real, but it is not the truth. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that distorts your reflection. You appear smaller, weaker, flawed. Anxiety is like that mirror. It reflects not reality, but fear. When we recognize the distortion, we stop believing it. We begin to see more clearly. The other person is not our savior, nor our enemy. They are a human being, walking their own path, just like us. Compassion is the balm for relational anxiety. When we shift focus from, do they love me enough, to, how can I love them well, the heart opens. Anxiety shrinks in the presence of compassion because compassion is expansive. It does not cling. It gives freely without demanding return. Paradoxically, the less we demand, the more freely love flows. Still, some relationships are deeply painful. Not every bond can or should be preserved. Compassion also means honesty with ourselves and with others. If a relationship is abusive, manipulative, or destructive, the compassionate act may be to let go. Forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it means walking away with peace, instead of staying and feeding endless cycles of harm. The teachings remind us, letting go is not failure. It is wisdom. Just as a tree sheds its leaves in autumn, we may release relationships that no longer nourish growth. The tree is not diminished. It prepares for new life. We, too, can release with love, trusting that the space created will allow healing and new connections to arise. Family relationships also bring unique struggles. Parents and children often carry generations of unspoken pain. Expectations passed down, wounds unhealed, words unsaid, all of these become knots of tension. Many people live with the silent stress of not being understood by their family or not living up to what was expected. This pain is heavy because family ties are deep. Here, too, compassion is key. We begin by seeing that our parents, our children, our siblings are also caught in their own cycles of suffering. A harsh word from a parent may reflect their own fear, learned long before you were born. A child's rebellion may reflect their struggle to find identity. When we see beneath behavior to the suffering underneath, blame softens. Healing becomes possible. This healing does not always mean agreement. Families may continue to disagree, to hold different values, to misunderstand one another. But healing means shifting from judgment to understanding. It means choosing patience instead of resentment. It means creating space where love can breathe, even in disagreement. Friendships, too, are tested by the pressures of modern life. Distance, busyness, and changing priorities can erode even the strongest bonds. Many people carry the quiet grief of friendships that faded without explanation. Buddhist wisdom invites us to hold these changes lightly. Just as rivers change course, relationships shift. Some flow with us for a lifetime, others for a season. Both are precious. Both can be honored without clinging. Ultimately, every relationship is an opportunity for practice. Each smile is a lesson in joy. Each conflict is a lesson in patience. Each loss is a lesson in impermanence. Together, they form the fabric of spiritual growth. Through relationships, we learn the deepest truths not in abstract philosophy, but in the living classroom of the heart. When we approach relationships this way, the stress begins to lift. We stop demanding perfection. We stop clinging to illusions. We begin to love, as the Buddha described, like the sun, shining freely on all without asking anything in return. This love does not guarantee that relationships will never end or that pain will never arise. But it guarantees that whatever comes, we can meet it with an open heart. And so, we close this chapter on the stress of human connection. We have seen how expectations create conflict, how communication can heal, how compassion softens the sharp edges of love, how letting go is sometimes the most loving act of all. We have seen that relationships, though fragile, can also be the greatest teachers on the path to peace. Yet, beyond relationships with others, there is another, deeper struggle, the relationship we have with ourselves. Even in silence, even alone, the storm of anxiety can rise. It is a quiet shadow, often invisible to others, but heavy to the one who carries it. And so, as we step forward, we turn to the next pain in modern life, the weight of anxiety and the freedom waiting on the other side. Anxiety is the ghost that follows many of us wherever we go. It appears in the morning before the day begins, in the evening when silence falls, and even in the middle of moments that should feel joyful. It whispers questions we cannot answer. What if I fail? What if I get sick? What if I lose the people I love? Unlike stress, which is tied to specific tasks or pressures, anxiety often has no clear cause. It is a cloud that hovers, dark and undefined, ready to rain at any moment. In today's world, anxiety has become almost universal. Children feel it before exams. Adults feel it at work, in relationships, in uncertain economies. Even those who seem confident often fight invisible battles behind closed doors. A modern environment feeds anxiety, constant news of danger, endless comparisons on social media, the relentless pressure to succeed. Each message tells us the same thing: you are not safe, you are not enough, you must do more. The result is a nervous system perpetually on edge. The Buddhist teaching speaks directly to this suffering. He described fear as one of the great obstacles to liberation. Fear grows from ignorance, our mistaken belief that life can be controlled, that permanence can be secured. Anxiety is the child of this fear. It is the mind rehearsing disaster, clinging to certainty in a world that offers none. Consider the image of a tightrope walker high above the ground. Each step is careful, tense, eyes fixed on the possibility of falling. Now imagine another person walking freely on the same ground, with the same feet, but no fear. The tightrope walker and the free walker inhabit the same world, yet one lives in terror, the other in peace. Anxiety is the tightrope. It makes ordinary life feel like a constant balancing act above danger, even when we are standing safely on the earth. Anxiety often manifests in the body before the mind names it. A racing heartbeat, sweaty palms, shallow breaths, trembling hands. The nervous system prepares for danger, even when no danger is present. From an evolutionary perspective, this response once saved lives. But in the modern world, where most threats are psychological rather than physical, the system misfires. The body prepares for battle when all that lies ahead is a meeting, a conversation, or an unpaid bill. When the body is caught in this cycle, the mind joins in. Thoughts spiral. What if I fail? What if I can't handle it? What if this never ends? Each thought fuels the body's reaction, which in turn fuels more thoughts. The result is a self-reinforcing loop, a storm with no natural end. Many who suffer anxiety know this loop well, the sense that the more you try to calm down, the worse it gets. The Buddhist path offers a way to step out of this loop. The first step is awareness. Instead of resisting the sensations, we notice them. The racing heart, the trembling hands, the restless breath, we acknowledge them without judgment. We say quietly to ourselves, "This is fear. This is anxiety." In that moment, we stop fighting. And paradoxically, the storm begins to lose its strength. There is a teaching known as the two arrows. The first arrow is the physical sensation of anxiety, the quickened pulse, the tight chest. The second arrow is the story we add. This is terrible. I can't handle this. Something is wrong with me. The second arrow often causes more suffering than the first. But when we see clearly, we can refuse to fire it. We can allow the sensations to rise and fall like waves without building a prison of self-judgment around them. Breath practice becomes a lifeline here. Anxiety pulls us into the future, into the realm of what if. The breath anchors us in the now. Each inhale reminds us we are alive. Each exhale reminds us we can let go. The Buddha taught that mindfulness of breathing is a direct path to calm, not because it erases anxiety, but because it shifts our attention from imagined fears to living presence. Imagine holding a glass of water. If you hold it for a minute, it is light. If you hold it for an hour, your arm aches. If you hold it all day, the pain is unbearable. The weight has not changed. What has changed is the time you've spent holding it. Anxiety is like that glass. The longer we hold on to what if, the heavier it becomes. The practice is not to throw the glass violently, but to set it down gently. Again and again, not another practice is to question the anxious thought. Anxiety thrives on unquestioned belief. What if I fail? Becomes a certainty the moment we accept it. But when we pause and ask, is this true? Is this happening now? The thought loses its power. Most anxiety is about futures that never arrive. By bringing attention back to the present, we see that right now, in this breath, we are safe. Compassion also plays a crucial role. Anxiety often brings shame. People think, I shouldn't feel this way. Others are stronger. Something is wrong with me. This shame deepens suffering. But the Buddha taught that all beings experience fear. Anxiety is not a personal flaw. It is part of the human condition. When we meet our anxiety with kindness instead of judgment, we begin to heal. We can place a hand on the heart and say, it's okay. This is fear, and fear is human. I am allowed to feel this. Over time, the relationship with anxiety changes. Instead of seeing it as an enemy, we see it as a teacher. Each wave of anxiety is an invitation to practice presence, to return to breath, to release clinging. Anxiety becomes not a curse, but a reminder. Here is another chance to wake up, to meet life as it is. Of course, this does not mean anxiety disappears. Life will always bring uncertainty. There will always be moments that trigger fear. But when we practice, anxiety no longer rules us. It comes and goes like weather, while beneath it remains the steady sky of awareness. This awareness is who we are, not the storm, but the space that holds it. And as we rest in this awareness, we begin to see another truth. Anxiety does not arise only from fear of danger. It also arises from the craving for control. We believe that if we manage every detail, predict every outcome, we can escape suffering. But life resists control. The more we grasp, the more anxious we become. The path of freedom lies not in control, but in surrender, not a weak surrender, but a courageous one. A trust in the unfolding of life. Not to surrender is to accept that the future is unknown and that this is not a problem. To surrender is to release the fantasy of certainty and step into the reality of presence. The Buddha called this wise not knowing. It is not ignorance, but openness. It says, I do not know what tomorrow brings, but I am here for this breath, this step, this moment. This is the antidote to anxiety, not the false promise of guaranteed safety, but the living truth of presence. When we return to the now, again and again, the grip of anxiety loosens. We discover that peace is not found in controlling tomorrow, but in fully living today. And so, we end this first movement into anxiety with an open door. We have seen how it arises, how it loops between body and mind, how awareness, breath, compassion, and surrender can free us. Yet there is more to say, more to uncover. For anxiety is not only a private struggle, it is shaped by culture, by society, by the pace of the modern world. To understand it fully, we must look deeper. Anxiety does not exist in isolation. It is magnified by the world we live in. Our culture is fast, competitive, and filled with noise. The constant exposure to news of disaster, to images of perfection, to demands for more productivity, feeds the nervous system with a steady diet of fear. The body stays tense, the mind stays alert, even when no real danger is present. We become like soldiers on a battlefield, scanning for threats. Though the battlefield is only our daily life, this environment creates what might be called background anxiety. Even on good days, a low hum of unease persists. It may not overwhelm, but it never fully leaves. Like a faint buzzing in the room, it drains our energy. Over time, it shapes the way we see ourselves in the world. We begin to believe that worry is natural, that peace is impossible, that vigilance is the price of survival. But Buddhist wisdom challenges this belief. The Buddha taught that peace is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of awareness. Anxiety thrives when we are scattered, pulled into the past, projected into the future. Awareness gathers us back into the present. In the present, even if there is pain, there is also space. The anxious mind says, "What if?" Awareness says, "What is?" And in that simple shift, the storm softens. Consider the story of the poisoned arrow, which we have touched before. The man struck by the arrow delays treatment, demanding answers. He dies not from the arrow itself, but from the obsession with certainty. Anxiety repeats this pattern. We are struck by the arrow of uncertainty, and instead of tending to the wound, we demand answers to every possible what if. We think this will make us safe, but it only deepens suffering. The practice is to tend to the wound, to breathe, to be present, to allow healing without needing every answer. Modern psychology echoes this teaching. Therapists speak of exposure, of gently facing what we fear instead of avoiding it. The Buddha spoke of the same principle centuries ago, to sit with discomfort, to allow fear to arise and pass without running. Avoidance strengthens anxiety. Presence dissolves it. Each time we face fear with awareness, its power diminishes. Still, facing anxiety is not easy. The body's signals can feel overwhelming. Here, compassion becomes essential. Too often, we meet anxiety with aggression. I need to get rid of this. I shouldn't feel this way. But aggression fuels the storm. Compassion softens it. Imagine a frightened child. If you scold the child, fear grows. If you hold the child gently, fear calms. Your anxiety is that child. It does not need punishment. It needs kindness. Place your hand on your heart. Breathe. Say to yourself, "It's okay to feel this. I am here." This simple act can transform the experience. Another practice is to examine impermanence. Anxiety often feels endless, as if the storm will never break. But no feeling lasts forever. Every wave rises and falls. Every storm passes. When you remind yourself, "This too shall pass," you create space between yourself and the fear. You stop treating it as permanent and start seeing it as a visitor. Visitors do not define your home. They come and they go. Anxiety also thrives on comparison. Looking at others, we imagine they are calm, confident, and in control. We judge ourselves as weak. But the truth is that nearly everyone carries hidden anxiety. Some mask it, some manage it, but few escape it entirely. When you remember this, a sense of isolation eases. You realize you are not broken. You are human. Anxiety is not a defect. It is a universal experience. The Buddha invited us to transform this realization into compassion for others. When we see a colleague snap in irritation or a friend withdraw in silence, we can remember, they may be carrying anxiety I cannot see. Instead of judgment, we offer patience. Instead of distance, we offer kindness. In this way, our own anxiety becomes a bridge of empathy. What once felt like a curse becomes a source of connection. The ultimate freedom from anxiety is not found in eliminating fear, but in changing our relationship to it. Fear will still arise. Uncertainty will still come. But instead of grasping or resisting, we rest in awareness. We see fear as a cloud in the sky dark, passing, unable to obscure the vastness beyond. The sky is who we are. The cloud is only weather. This perspective shifts everything. We no longer wait for life to be perfect before we find peace. We find peace within imperfection. We no longer wait for anxiety to vanish before we live. We live even with anxiety, and in doing so, we discover it loses its grip. This is the promise of Buddhist wisdom, that freedom is possible here and now, even in the midst of fear. Not a perfect freedom, but a living freedom one breath at a time, one moment at a time, God. And so, we close this chapter on anxiety. We have seen its roots in fear, in craving for control, in cultural pressure. We have seen how awareness, compassion, breath, impermanence, and connection transform it. We have seen that peace is not the absence of anxiety, but the presence of wisdom. Yet anxiety is not the only shadow of modern life. Another burden weighs on us, one closely tied to all the others. The relentless chase for more possessions, more achievements, more status. This craving does not only fuel stress and anxiety, it shapes the very way we live. To understand the depth of modern suffering, we must now turn to the endless hunger for control and certainty, and how it entangles us in cycles of dissatisfaction. There is a restless hunger that drives much of modern life. It is not the hunger of the body, though it often disguises itself as desire for food, comfort, or possessions. It is a hunger of the mind, the craving for certainty, control, and permanence in a world that offers none. This craving is subtle, but it shapes nearly every thought. We plan obsessively to secure the future. We replay the past to fix what cannot be undone. We grasp at people, at things, at achievements, hoping they will anchor us in a sea of change. Yet the more we grasp, the more restless we feel. This hunger is what the Buddha called tanha thirst. It is the engine of suffering, the constant reaching for something just beyond our grasp. It tells us, if only I could know for sure. If only I could control this outcome. If only I could have just a little more, then I would be at peace. But the moment one desire is met, another arises. Peace remains always one step ahead, always promised, never delivered. Consider how this plays out in daily life. A person feels anxious about their job. They believe that if they get a promotion, they will finally feel secure. They work tirelessly, sacrificing health and relationships. When the promotion comes, there is joy for a day, a week, perhaps a month. Then the mind whispers again, what about the next step? What if I lose this? What if others surpass me? The thirst continues unquenched, or imagine someone who longs for love. They believe that if they find the perfect partner, they will never feel lonely again. When they meet someone, there is bliss. But soon, fear creeps in. Will they leave me? Do they love me enough? What if they change? Instead of freedom, the relationship becomes another arena for craving and control. The tragedy of this hunger is that it can never be satisfied. Life is impermanent. Jobs change, relationships shift, health declines, possessions break. To demand permanence from the impermanent is like demanding that the river stop flowing. The more tightly we grip, the more suffering we create. The Buddha offered a radical alternative, Instead of quenching thirst with more grasping, we turn to the root. We see the craving clearly for what it is, a pattern of the mind, not the truth of who we are. This seeing is liberating. When we recognize that no possession, no achievement, no certainty will ever bring lasting peace, we stop chasing shadows. We turn inward, toward the spaciousness of awareness, where peace is already present. Think of a clenched fist. When we crave control, the fist tightens. Muscle strain, effort increases, but nothing new enters the hand. The tighter the fist, the less it can hold. Now imagine opening the hand, empty, yet free, able to receive, able to let go. This is the shift from craving to freedom. It is not the world that changes, but the way we hold it. In modern culture, the craving for control shows up everywhere. We track every step, every calorie, every dollar, trying to manage life like a machine. We surround ourselves with information, believing that if we just know enough, we can predict every outcome. We cling to routines, to plans, to possessions as shields against uncertainty. Yet uncertainty always breaks through. The illusion of control cracks, and when it does, the stress and anxiety return stronger than before. The Buddhist teaching does not deny uncertainty. It embraces it. Life, he said, is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. These three marks of existence are not meant to depress us, but to free us. When we accept impermanence, we stop clinging. When we see unsatisfactoriness, we stop expecting perfection. When we realize not self, we stop identifying with every thought and fear. In this acceptance, peace arises not because life is controlled, but because we no longer demand that it be. A story from the teachings illustrates this beautifully. A man was crossing a river with a raft. The raft carried him safely to the other shore. Once he arrived, he wondered, "Should I carry the raft on my back, since it served me so well?" The Buddha explained, "The wise man leaves the raft behind." Tools are to be used, not clung to. In the same way, control and certainty are useful tools when possible, but suffering arises when we cling to them beyond their purpose. The practice of mindfulness helps loosen this clinging. When the mind races with what-ifs, we return to the breath. When fear of loss arises, we notice it without judgment. Each act of noticing interrupts the habit of grasping. Slowly, the fist begins to open. Slowly, the mind learns to rest in the present without demanding a guarantee of the future. Generosity is another antidote to craving. When we give, we loosen the grip of possession. We discover that safety does not come from accumulation, but from connection. Compassion too dissolves craving. When we turn our attention from "what can I get" to "how can I help," the thirst for control softens. We begin to live not from fear, but from love. None of this means we stop planning, stop preparing, or stop caring. Wisdom is not passivity. It is balance. We plan for tomorrow, but we do not cling to tomorrow. We care for possessions, but we do not worship them. We love deeply, but we do not demand permanence. In this balance, peace is possible. And gradually, a new way of living emerges. We discover the joy of simplicity, the freedom of needing less, the ease of trusting life. We discover the courage of surrender, meeting the unknown with openness instead of fear. We discover the richness of presence, finding satisfaction not in what we control, but in what we experience here and now. This is the heart of the path: to see craving clearly, to release its grip, and to rest in the spaciousness that remains. The endless hunger for certainty begins to fade. In its place arises a quiet confidence, a trust that whatever comes, we will meet it with awareness. And as this hunger softens, we are ready to explore the next dimension of suffering. For even when craving is seen, even when control is loosened, the mind still clutters itself with memories, regrets, and endless commentary. Our inner world becomes overcrowded, like a room filled with forgotten objects. To step further into freedom, we must learn to clear this mental clutter and rediscover the open space of presence. The craving for control is like a shadow that follows us through every season of life. Even when we see it, even when we name it, it lingers. It tells us we must keep rehearsing every conversation, predicting every outcome, preparing for every disaster. It says, if you let go, you will fall. Yet the truth is often the opposite. The more we cling, the heavier we become. The moment we release, even a little, we discover that life carries us. Think of a swimmer who panics in deep water. They thrash, gasp, and tire themselves. The water feels like an enemy. But when they surrender, when they trust the water to hold them, they float. Nothing has changed but their relationship to the water. Life is the same. Control is not what keeps us safe. Trust does. And trust arises not from blind faith, but from lived experience. Seeing again and again that the present moment is bearable, even without certainty. The Buddha invited us to cultivate this trust through practice. Each time we breathe mindfully, we are rehearsing surrender. Each time we notice a craving and let it pass, we are rehearsing release. Each time we accept impermanence, we are rehearsing courage. These small acts of letting go become habits. Slowly, the grooves of craving soften, and new grooves of freedom form. But the mind is cunning. It often disguises craving as responsibility. I am not worrying, it insists. I am preparing. I am not clinging. I am being careful. Sometimes this is true. Planning wisely is skillful. But often, the planning becomes endless. We make lists of lists, prepare for scenarios that never come, and carry burdens that do not exist. The difference between wisdom and craving is felt in the body. Wisdom feels light, craving feels heavy. Wisdom opens the heart, craving tightens it. By listening closely to the body, we can tell the difference. Another disguise of craving is perfectionism. We convince ourselves that if we can do everything perfectly, life will finally be under control. But perfectionism is an endless chase. Even when we meet one standard, another arises. The Buddha's teaching of the middle way speaks directly here. It is not about extremes, neither indulgence nor harsh denial, neither chaos nor rigid control. It is about balance. To walk the middle way is to care deeply without clinging, to act wisely without demanding perfection. We might ask, if we do not cling to control, what guides our lives? The answer is awareness. Awareness is not passive. It sees clearly. It responds to what is, instead of clinging to what should be. Awareness is like a lantern in the dark. It does not erase the unknown, but it lights each step. We do not need the whole path illuminated to walk. We need only enough light for this step, and then the next. Letting go of control also frees us to discover joy. When we cling, life feels like a battle. But when we release, life feels like a dance. The music plays, and we move with it, not knowing the next note, but trusting the rhythm. This dance is not careless, it is alive. It allows mistakes, surprises, changes. And within this dance, we discover that peace does not depend on certainty. It depends on presence. Generosity is one of the most practical ways to loosen the grip of craving. When we give our time, our attention, our resources, we release the illusion that we must hold everything tightly to survive. We see that life continues even when we let go. In fact, life becomes richer. The joy of giving outweighs the fear of loss. The Buddha taught that generosity is the first step on the path, not because it earns merit, but because it breaks the chains of craving. Contentment is another key. Modern culture trains us to always want more money, more success, more control. But contentment says, this is enough. it does not mean complacency. It means appreciating what is here instead of postponing peace for some future condition. Contentment is radical because it stands against the endless engine of craving. It says, I do not need everything under control to rest. I can rest here. This does not erase life's challenges. Difficulties still come. But when craving loosens, difficulties no longer dominate. We respond instead of reacting. We face change without collapsing. We meet loss without being destroyed. This is true freedom, not the freedom to control everything, but the freedom to live without being controlled by craving. And so, as this section draws to a close, we see the pattern more clearly. Overthinking, stress, relationships, anxiety, craving, all are threads of the same tapestry. They are different faces of the same hunger for certainty in an uncertain world. Each time we release, each time we surrender, each time we trust awareness, we step out of the tapestry and into spaciousness. But another burden remains, one that touches every mind. Even when we loosen craving, even when we surrender control, the mind still hoards. It holds on to memories, grudges, unfinished stories. It fills with clutter, like a room so crowded we can no longer breathe. To walk further into freedom, we must learn to clear this mental clutter not by force, but with gentle awareness that the mind is a collector. Day after day, it gathers impressions, memories, unfinished conversations, unresolved worries. Some of these are useful skills we need, knowledge we apply. But much of what the mind collects becomes clutter. Old regrets, grudges, imagined arguments, judgments repeated so often they feel like truth. Over time, the clutter fills the inner space until there is no room left to breathe. We live in an age where mental clutter is heavier than ever. Each day we are bombarded with information, messages, notifications, headlines, advertisements. The mind does not have time to digest, to release, to rest. Instead, it piles everything into storage. A fragment of a song, a half-read article, an unresolved email, all of it lingers. Even when we try to rest, the clutter hums in the background. This clutter creates suffering because it blocks clarity. Imagine walking into a room filled with old boxes stacked to the ceiling. You cannot see the windows. You cannot find what you need. You stumble in the dark. The same happens inside the mind. When clutter dominates, we cannot see reality as it is. Every situation is filtered through layers of memory, expectation, and opinion. The Buddha compared the mind to a clear lake. When the water is still, we see the bottom. When it is stirred with mud, we see only distortion. Mental clutter is that mud. It is stirred by constant thought, by clinging to the past, by projecting into the future. We think we are understanding life, but we are only staring at the mud. Clarity comes when the water settles, when we stop stirring, when we allow stillness. One of the greatest sources of clutter is regret. The mind replays past mistakes over and over, as if repetition will rewrite history. I should have said this. I should not have done that. If only I had chosen differently. These thoughts create a prison of memory. The Buddha acknowledged the pain of past actions, but he did not teach dwelling on them. Instead, he taught acknowledgement, repentance, and release. To see clearly, to make amends if possible, and then to let go. To carry regret forever is like carrying a burning coal in your pocket. It does not punish the past. It only burns the present. Another source of clutter is resentment. We hold on to the words that wounded us, the betrayals that broke us, the injustices that scarred us. We replay them like old films, keeping them alive long after the moment has passed. But resentment, too, is a burning coal. Forgiveness is not about excusing what was wrong. It is about setting down the coal. It is about saying, I will not carry this pain any longer. The act of letting go clears space in the mind, space that resentment once occupied. Mental clutter also comes from self-criticism. Many people live with an inner voice that never rests, a critic that comments on every move. Not good enough, too slow, too weak, too late. This constant narration fills the mind with noise. It is exhausting, not because the voice is true, but because we believe it. The Buddhist teaching of not-self is a powerful antidote. When we see that these thoughts are not me, not mine, not who I am, they lose their grip. They become passing sounds, not eternal truths. Even positive clutter can be a burden. Fantasies about the future, daydreams of success. Imagine conversations that may never happen. These may feel pleasant, but they still pull us away from the present. They fill the space that could be used for awareness. The Buddha invited us to see even pleasant thoughts as impermanent, as empty of substance. To enjoy them lightly, but not to cling not. So how do we clear the clutter? Not by force. Forcing thoughts to stop only stirs the mud more. The practice is gentle awareness. We notice a thought. We name it. Memory, regret, judgment, planning. Then we return to the breath. We do this again and again, like slowly tidying a room. Each time we let go of one thought, space opens. Over time, the room clears. The lake settles. Meditation is the training ground for this clearing. When we sit quietly, the clutter rises at first. Thoughts rush in, demanding attention. Many beginners believe this means they are failing. In truth, it means the process has begun. The clutter is surfacing so it can be seen. The practice is to keep returning again and again to the breath, to the present. Slowly, the mind learns to release its grip. Slowly, space returns, but meditation is not the only way. Simplicity in daily life also clears the mind. Reducing the noise we consume, less scrolling, less distraction, less multitasking gives the mind space to breathe. Walking in nature, cooking with presence, sharing a meal without screens, these are also practices of decluttering. Each act of simplicity is a broom sweeping the mind. The Buddha himself lived a life of profound simplicity. He gave up wealth, possessions, and distraction, not out of rejection of the world, but to create space for clarity. His path is not about poverty for its own sake, but about freedom from excess. When we simplify, we make room for what matters. Awareness, compassion, connection. Mental clutter will never disappear entirely. The mind will always generate thoughts, just as the heart beats and the lungs breathe. But clutter need not dominate. When we practice release, thoughts become like passing clouds in a wide sky. They appear, they drift, they vanish. The sky remains vast, open, untouched. This sky is our true nature. The clutter is only passing weather dot. As the mind clears, peace arises naturally. Not because we forced it, but because it was always there, hidden beneath the noise. We realize that clarity does not need to be created. It only needs to be uncovered. Like a room revealed when the boxes are removed. Like a lake revealed when the mud settles. Peace is already present dot, and with this clarity comes freedom. Freedom to meet life without the weight of the past, without the noise of self-criticism, without the clutter of endless commentary. Freedom to live lightly, to breathe deeply, to rest in the spaciousness of awareness. But clearing the mind is not the end. It is the preparation for deeper work. For when the mind is uncluttered, we begin to see the subtler sources of suffering, the subtle habits of judgment, the quiet grip of fear, the hidden resistance to impermanence. These too must be met with awareness. And so the journey continues, from clearing the mind to cultivating the heart, from silence to compassion, from emptiness to fullness. The more we explore mental clutter, the clearer it becomes that it is not simply about thoughts. It is about attachment. Each thought that lingers is one we cling to. A memory is replayed, not because it is important now, but because we refuse to release it. A worry repeats not because it solves anything, but because we hold it close, believing it will protect us. In this way, clutter is not just noise, it is clinging in disguise. The Buddha once compared the mind to a garden. Seeds are constantly falling, some weeds, some flowers. If we water the weeds of regret, anger, and fear, they grow and crowd out the flowers. If we water the seeds of peace, compassion, and joy, they blossom. The clutter of the mind is simply weeds watered too often. The practice is not to hate the weeds, but to stop feeding them. Then, naturally, the flowers emerge. One of the most powerful tools for this is mindfulness of speech, both outer and inner. Outer speech creates clutter when we gossip, complain, or repeat stories of anger. Each word spoken keeps the mind tied to the past. Inner speech creates clutter when we replay conversations, criticize ourselves, or build endless narratives. By practicing mindful speech, pausing before we speak, noticing before we narrate, we prevent clutter from multiplying. Silence becomes a friend, not an emptiness to be feared. Gratitude is another way to clear space. When we focus on what is missing, the mind fills with dissatisfaction. When we focus on what is present, clutter fades. Gratitude is like opening a window in a crowded room. Suddenly there is fresh air, light, perspective. The Buddha encouraged gratitude as a daily practice, not only for the good fortune we enjoy, but for the very opportunity to walk the path of awareness. Each moment of gratitude is a moment the mind is too full of peace to cling to clutter. Forgiveness, too, is an act of decluttering. Many minds are filled with the ghosts of old conflicts. We carry enemies inside us long after they have left our lives. Forgiveness releases these ghosts. It does not excuse harm, but it frees us from carrying the burden. Imagine trying to walk while dragging a heavy rope tied to dozens of stones. Forgiveness is untying the rope. The stones remain, but we are no longer bound. Sometimes the clutter feels endless. We may wonder, will my mind ever be clear? The teachings remind us that clarity is not about perfection. Even the most practiced mind will generate thoughts. The difference is that the wise do not identify with them. A thought arises, and they let it pass. A feeling arises, and they let it pass. They are like a traveler at a busy train station who does not board every train. They simply watch them come and go, knowing their destination lies elsewhere. This practice grows slowly. At first, we notice the clutter only after we have been lost in it for hours. Later, we notice within minutes. Eventually, we notice as it arises. With patience, we cultivate a mind that is spacious, light, and free. The clutter still visits, but it no longer defines the home dot as the mind clears. Another discovery emerges. Simplicity is joyful. The modern world tells us that happiness lies in more possessions, more experiences, more knowledge. But in truth, happiness often lies in less distraction, less noise, less clutter. When we simplify, we rediscover the small joys of life, the taste of tea, the sound of birds, the warmth of sunlight. These were always present, but the clutter drowned them out. Simplicity makes them visible again. This joy of simplicity is not only personal, it transforms our relationships. When our minds are cluttered, we cannot truly listen to others. We hear their words, but our inner commentary interrupts. What does this mean for me? How should I respond? Do they like me? When our minds are clear, we can listen fully. We meet others with presence, and they feel it. Clarity in the mind creates connection in the heart. Ultimately, clearing mental clutter is not about emptying the mind, but about making space for truth. When the noise fades, we see reality as it is. We see impermanence more clearly, how every thought, every emotion, every moment rises and falls. We see interconnection more clearly, how our thoughts shape our actions, how our actions shape others. We see compassion more clearly, how all beings struggle with the same clutter, the same suffering. In this clarity, wisdom grows naturally. And so, we close this chapter on mental clutter. We have seen how it arises from clinging, how it manifests as regret, resentment, criticism, and distraction. We have seen how awareness, simplicity, forgiveness, and gratitude clear space. We have seen that peace is not created, but uncovered. The lake of the mind was always clear. We only needed to let the mud settle. But as we step into this clarity, a new challenge arises. For clarity is not always comfortable. When the noise fades, deeper truths emerge, truths about mortality, about impermanence, about the fragile nature of life. To face these truths without fear requires courage. It requires a new practice, learning to sit calmly with impermanence, with loss, with the certainty of change. This is the next step on our journey. Loss is the thread woven through every human life. We lose possessions, we lose relationships, we lose health, and eventually we lose even the body itself. No one escapes this truth. The child loses their favorite toy. The young adult loses their first love. The parent loses their sense of control as children grow. The elder loses strength, memory, and independence. And at every stage, we lose time itself, days slipping by, moments gone forever. Impermanence is not a hidden truth. We see it in the changing seasons, in the aging of our own faces, in the death of those we love. Yet most of us live as if it were not real. We cling to the illusion of permanence, telling ourselves, this will last, this will stay, this will not change. And when life inevitably shifts, we feel shock, grief, and betrayal. The Buddha did not deny this suffering. He placed impermanence, anicca, at the heart of his teaching. He pointed out that everything that arises will pass away. Every pleasure fades. Every pain fades. Every life ends. To deny this truth is to invite suffering. To accept it is to open the door to freedom. But acceptance is not easy. Loss strikes at the core of who we are. When someone we love dies, the absence feels unbearable. When health declines, fear of helplessness creeps in. When dreams collapse, despair follows. The mind resists, saying, this should not happen. This cannot happen. Yet it has happened. And so we suffer twice, once from the loss itself, and again from our refusal to accept it. Consider the story of Kisa Gotami, a young mother in the time of the Buddha. When her only child died, she was overcome with grief. She carried the body from house to house, begging for medicine to bring him back. At last, someone directed her to the Buddha. She pleaded with him, and he said, yes, I can help. But first, bring me a mustard seed from a home that has never known death. Relieved, she went from door to door. But every family she met had lost someone, a father, a mother, a child. By the end of the day, she returned to the Buddha empty-handed, but with new understanding. Death comes to every house. In this realization, her grief began to soften. This story is not meant to dismiss grief, but to show that grief is shared. Loss is not a personal failure. It is the fabric of existence. When we see that our suffering is part of the human story, we feel less alone. Compassion grows, not only for ourselves, but for all who suffer. Modern life often hides impermanence. We push aging to the margins. We avoid speaking of death. We distract ourselves from endings. But avoidance does not erase truth. It only makes it harder when truth arrives. The teachings invite us instead to turn toward impermanence, gently but honestly. To look at change not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Impermanence teaches us to cherish. When we know that moments will not last, we treasure them more deeply. A conversation with a friend, the laughter of a child, the warmth of sunlight on the skin, these become precious when we remember they are fleeting. Impermanence turns ordinary life into sacred life. Impermanence also teaches us to release. When we see that everything changes, we loosen our grip. We stop clinging to possessions, knowing they will one day be gone. We stop demanding permanence from relationships, knowing they will shift. We stop resisting our own aging, knowing it is part of the same natural flow. This release is not resignation. It is wisdom, the wisdom of aligning with reality instead of fighting it. Grief, however, cannot be rushed. When loss strikes, the wound is real. Buddhist practice does not tell us to skip grief or suppress it. It tells us to feel it fully, without drowning in it. To cry, to ache, to mourn, and at the same time, to know that even grief is impermanent. The waves of sorrow rise and fall. The ocean of awareness holds them all. Meditation on death, known as Maranasati, may sound morbid, but it is a practice of liberation. To reflect on our mortality is to see life clearly. When we remember that time is short, we waste less of it. We let go of petty conflicts. We prioritize love, kindness, and meaning. Far from depressing us, death awareness can awaken us to life. Every breath becomes a gift. Every day becomes precious. A monk once said, "Death is certain, but the time of death is uncertain. Therefore, the only time to live is now." Anxiety clings to the future. Regret clings to the past, but impermanence directs us to the present. In the present, life is full. In the present, nothing is missing. Impermanence is not just the end of things. It is also the beginning. Each loss clears space for new growth. Each ending makes room for a new beginning. Think of a forest. Old trees fall. Decay can nourish the soil. New saplings rise in their place. A forest lives through constant change. Our lives are no different. Loss nourishes growth. Endings give rise to beginnings. When we resist this cycle, we suffer. When we accept it, we find belonging in the great rhythm of life. Yet acceptance does not erase longing. We still miss those we lose. We still ache for what is gone. The practice here is compassion for ourselves, for our tender hearts that love so deeply they break. To grieve is not weakness. It is evidence of love. And love, even when transformed by loss, never truly disappears. It flows on as memory, as gratitude, as kindness offered to others. Impermanence also reshapes our relationship to fear. Much of anxiety, as we have seen, comes from trying to secure permanence. When we accept that everything changes, fear softens. We stop demanding guarantees. We begin to trust the flow. Instead of bracing against every shift, we learn to bend with it, like bamboo in the wind. In this flexibility lies resilience. And so, impermanence becomes not only a source of pain, but a doorway to freedom. When we deny it, we suffer endlessly. When we accept it, we live fully. Each day becomes a gift. Each connection becomes sacred. Each breath becomes enough. But impermanence is only one side of the truth. Alongside loss and change, there is another universal challenge: the ego's endless demand for recognition, for validation, for identity. Even when we accept impermanence, the ego whispers, "I must still prove myself. I must still be seen, admired, remembered." To walk further on the path, we must turn to this hunger of the self and learn how to meet it with wisdom. Impermanence humbles us. It shows us that no matter how tightly we hold, life will eventually slip through our fingers. Yet there is another layer of suffering hidden within this truth: the desire to be remembered, to leave a permanent mark, to escape impermanence through legacy or recognition. The ego whispers, "Yes, everything fades, but not me. I must endure. I must matter." This desire for permanence takes many forms. Some chase fame, believing that if their name is known, they will not truly die. Others cling to possessions, hoping that what they build will outlast them. Still others seek control over children, partners, or communities, trying to ensure their influence continues after they are gone. But impermanence applies even here. Fame fades, possessions crumble, influence dissolves. The monuments of emperors stand in ruins. The names of once famous people are forgotten. What remains is not what the ego built, but the truth that all things change. The Buddha saw through this illusion. He taught anatta, not self. He pointed out that what we call I is not a solid, eternal being, but a collection of changing processes. Body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, consciousness. None of these is permanent. None can be grasped. When we look closely, the self is as elusive as smoke. It appears solid from a distance, but up close it dissolves. At first, this teaching can feel frightening. If there is no permanent self, then who loves, who suffers, who dies? But as we contemplate deeper, it becomes liberating. If the self is not fixed, then we are not trapped. We are not bound by old identities, old stories, old mistakes. We are free to change, free to grow, free to let go. Loss does not destroy us, because there was never a solid us to destroy. There was only a flowing stream, shifting and alive. Grief softens in this light. We mourn those we lose, but we also see that they have not vanished completely. Their body has returned to the earth. Their love continues in our hearts. Their influence ripples through the lives they touched. They are gone, yet they remain, transformed. Impermanence does not erase them. It reshapes them. In the same way, our own lives will ripple outward, not as permanent monuments, but as living echoes of kindness, compassion, and presence. This shift from clinging to self towards seeing interconnection is one of the deepest gifts of Buddhist wisdom. Instead of saying, I must endure forever, we say, I am part of something larger. Instead of fearing that death makes life meaningless, we see that impermanence makes life precious. Each act of love matters, not because it will last forever, but because it shines in this moment. Each moment of awareness matters, not because it builds an eternal self, but because it awakens us to life as it is. Consider a candle. Its flame flickers, burns, and eventually goes out. Yet in its burning, it gives light. It warms the air. It may light another candle. The flame is not permanent, but its impact is real. We are like this candle. Our lives are brief, but in their brevity lies beauty. To demand permanence would be to miss the gift of the flame itself. This perspective also transforms our daily choices. When we stop chasing permanence, we stop wasting energy on what does not matter. We care less about status, recognition, or possessions. We care more about presence, kindness, and connection. Impermanence focuses the heart. It asks, if this moment is all you have, how will you live it? Loss will still bring tears. Grief will still ache. But in the light of impermanence, grief becomes not just sorrow, but gratitude. Gratitude for the love that was shared. Gratitude for the moments that were given. Gratitude for the chance to walk together for even a short time. Gratitude does not erase pain, but it transforms it into something bearable, even beautiful. And so impermanence, once feared as the source of suffering, becomes a doorway to freedom. When we deny it, we suffer endlessly. When we accept it, we awaken to the richness of life. We discover that nothing needs to last forever to be meaningful. We discover that loss is not the opposite of love, but its companion. We discover that by letting go, we are free to live. As this chapter closes, the path leads us naturally to the next struggle. For even when we accept impermanence, the ego continues to clamor. It craves recognition, validation, and control. It says, if I cannot last forever, then at least let me shine brighter than others. Let me be seen. Let me be special. This hunger drives much of modern dissatisfaction, fueling comparison, competition, and the endless chase for worth. To move forward, we must face this hunger directly and see through the illusions of the self. The ego is a restless guest in the house of the mind. It never sits still, never feels satisfied. It whispers, "Am I important enough? Do they see me? Do they admire me? Do I matter?" It searches constantly for recognition, for validation, for proof of existence. And even when praise arrives, even when the spotlight shines for a moment, the ego is not appeased. It immediately hungers again. That was not enough. I need more. In the modern world, this hunger is magnified. Social media thrives on it. Each like, each comment, each follower is a small sip of recognition, quickly fading, leaving thirst sharper than before. Careers are built not only on skill, but on the ability to be noticed. Even personal relationships can become arenas for validation, as we silently measure whether others give us enough attention, respect, or affection. The ego turns life into a stage, demanding constant applause, yet the applause never lasts. People forget, trends change, attention shifts, and in the silence that follows, the ego panics. If no one sees me, do I exist? If no one remembers me, am I real? This is the root of the suffering, mistaking recognition for identity, mistaking praise for worth. The Buddha saw this illusion clearly. He taught that clinging to self-image is one of the deepest traps. The I we defend so fiercely is not a solid being, but a bundle of changing processes. To fight for its permanence is to fight against reality. Think of a shadow. It appears when light meets form. It shifts with movement, lengthens with the sun, disappears in darkness. We may chase the shadow, try to pin it down, try to make it permanent. But it was never solid to begin with. The ego is like that shadow. It appears through conditions: family, culture, memory, praise, blame. It feels real, but when we look closely, it dissolves. This does not mean we must erase identity. We all play roles: parent, friend, worker, artist. These roles are useful, just as names are useful. But suffering arises when we mistake the role for the whole. When we cling to identity as if it were eternal, we suffer every time it shifts. The parent suffers when children grow independent. The worker suffers when the job is lost. The admired suffer when fame fades. Clinging turns roles into prisons. Awareness turns them into tools. One of the Buddha's most famous teachings is the parable of the empty boat. Imagine you are rowing across a river when another boat collides with yours. If the boat is empty, you simply adjust your course and move on. But if you see someone inside, you may grow angry. Why were you not careful? Why did you hit me? The impact was the same, but the story changes everything. The ego is like the filled boat. It creates stories of offense, of insult, of identity under attack. When we see the boat is empty, that there is no solid self to defend, anger and pride dissolve. We simply adjust and move on. Pride and shame are two sides of the same ego coin. When praised, the ego inflates. I am special, superior, safe. When criticized, the ego deflates. I am worthless, broken, exposed. Both are forms of suffering because both depend on external validation. As long as our worth is tied to others' opinions, we are never free. Freedom comes from seeing that worth is not given or taken by others. Worth is inherent in being, in awareness itself. The practice of humility is medicine for the ego. Humility does not mean belittling ourselves or denying our gifts. It means seeing clearly that our gifts are not ours alone. They are conditions arising from countless causes. Our talents come from teachers, parents, communities, even from circumstances beyond our control. To be humble is to recognize interdependence. In this recognition, the ego softens. The hunger for constant recognition fades. Compassion is another antidote. When we turn attention outward, how can I serve? How can I ease another's pain? The ego loses its grip. Service shifts the focus from how am I seen to how can I give? This giving is not self-erasure. It is freedom from the narrow cage of ego. Paradoxically, those who give without seeking recognition often touch others most deeply. Their presence shines without needing applause. Meditation also reveals the ego's illusions. When we sit quietly, we see thoughts arise. I am failing. I am succeeding. I am important. I am forgotten. We watch them come and go, like clouds in the sky. None lasts. None defines us. The more we observe, the more we realize the I is not fixed. It is a story told by thoughts. Awareness itself is larger than any story. Still, the ego is persistent. Even on the spiritual path, it disguises itself. We may think, I am wiser than others. I am more compassionate. I am progressing faster. Spiritual pride is still pride. The Buddha warned against this subtle trap. True progress is not measured by superiority, but by freedom from comparison. The measure of practice is not how others see us, but how lightly we hold ourselves in daily life. We can practice loosening the ego's grip in simple ways. We can listen more than we speak. We can admit when we are wrong. We can let someone else take credit without protest. Each small act of humility weakens the ego's hunger. Each moment of presence shifts us from needing to be seen to simply being. The deepest liberation comes when we see that there is no fixed self to defend. The Buddha did not deny experience. He denied permanence. The body, thoughts, emotions, and roles are real in this moment, but they change in the next. To cling to them as me is to build a castle on sand. To release them is to discover the spaciousness of being fluid, open, interconnected. This realization does not erase individuality. We still live, love, and act, but we no longer build a prison around I. We become like waves on the ocean, unique in form, yet inseparable from the whole. The wave does not need recognition to exist. It rises, it falls, it returns to the ocean. In the same way, we rise, we live, we dissolve, yet we are never separate from the vastness of life itself. And so, the ego's hunger begins to quiet, not because we defeated it, but because we stopped feeding it. Recognition may come or not, praise may come or not, but our peace does not depend on them. We discover a deeper worth, one that is not tied to applause or identity. It is the worth of being alive, aware, and connected. This freedom from ego's hunger does not mean passivity. We still act, create, and serve, but we act from love, not from the need to be seen. We create for the joy of creation, not for validation. We serve because compassion flows naturally, not because we seek reward. This is the paradox. When we stop craving recognition, our presence shines more brightly than ever. Yet even as we soften the ego's grip, another challenge remains. Beyond recognition, beyond validation, the mind still craves meaning. We ask, what is the point of all this? Why do I live, struggle, and suffer? What makes life worth living? These questions can feel heavy, even frightening, but they are also the doorway to the deepest wisdom. To continue, we must now turn to the human search for meaning and how Buddhist teachings illuminate it. The craving for recognition is a powerful force because it hides beneath nearly every human pursuit. A person may say they want success, wealth, or influence, but often what they seek is not the thing itself, it is the validation that comes with it. They want to be seen, respected, admired. They want proof that they matter. But as we have seen, this hunger cannot be satisfied by applause, because applause fades as quickly as it arrives. The Buddha's path offers another way. Instead of chasing recognition, we practice recognition of a different kind, recognition of truth, of impermanence, of interdependence. We turn the spotlight inward, not to inflate the ego, but to illuminate the illusions that keep us bound. When we see clearly, the need for constant validation weakens. We realize that our worth was never in others. Eyes to begin with. One way to loosen the grip of recognition is through anonymity in service. Imagine helping someone without revealing your name, or giving without anyone knowing. At first, the ego protests, but who will know I was kind? Who will appreciate me? Yet in the silence that follows, a deeper joy arises. The act itself becomes the reward. Service without recognition is pure. It frees us from the endless bargaining of the ego, which always asks, what do I get in return? Another practice is to observe the rise and fall of recognition in daily life. Notice the warm feeling when someone praises you. Notice the sting when someone ignores or criticizes you. Then ask, where is that feeling a day later? A week later? Recognition is fleeting. When we see its impermanence, we stop chasing it so desperately. Instead of anchoring our identity in others' opinions, we anchor it in awareness itself steady, spacious, unshaken. This is not to say that appreciation is wrong. Kind words and recognition are natural in human relationships. The problem arises when they become the foundation of our worth. When we build our house on the shifting sands of others' opinions, we live in constant fear of collapse. The Buddha invites us to build instead on the rock of awareness, compassion, and truth. These do not depend on external applause. They endure even in silence. The hunger for recognition also distorts relationships. Friends become competitors. Colleagues become rivals. Even family members become sources of comparison. The ego measures constantly. Who is ahead? Who is admired? Who is overlooked? This measuring poisons connection. Instead of seeing others as companions on the journey, we see them as threats or mirrors. Compassion heals this distortion. When we shift focus from how am I seen to how are they suffering? How can I help? The walls of competition dissolve. We no longer need to outshine others to feel worthy. Their joy becomes our joy, their success our inspiration, their suffering our concern. This is the heart of true connection free from the ego's restless. Comparisons. Stories from the Buddhist tradition illustrate this shift. There are tales of monks who, when insulted, did not defend themselves because they saw no self to defend. There are tales of teachers who, when praised, did not inflate with pride because they saw praise as passing wind. These stories are not about indifference. They are about freedom. When we no longer cling to recognition, we become unshakable. No praise can intoxicate us. No blame can wound us deeply. We remain steady, like a mountain unmoved by storms. This does not mean we suppress emotion. It means we see through it. When pride arises, we notice it. When shame arises, we notice it. Both are treated as passing guests, not permanent residents. We do not push them away, but we do not build our identity on them. With practice, the heart grows spacious enough to hold both pride and shame without being bound by either. The ultimate freedom from recognition comes in realizing that the self itself is not fixed. Anatta, or not self, does not mean we are nothing. It means we are not the solid, unchanging I we imagine. We are a flow of conditions, body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts all arising and passing. The ego clings to one version of this flow and says, this is me. But when we look closely, that me is already gone. Another has taken its place. To cling to it is to cling to a mirage. When we live with this understanding, the hunger for recognition weakens naturally. We still appreciate kind words, we still value connection, but we no longer mistake them for proof of existence. We rest instead in the deeper truth, that awareness itself is enough, that being present, alive, and connected is worth beyond measure God. And so, as this chapter draws to a close, we see how the ego's hunger distorts our lives, how it fuels comparison, competition, and dissatisfaction. We have also seen how humility, compassion, anonymity, and awareness can dissolve its grip. Recognition will always rise and fall, but our peace need not rise and fall with it. From here, the path leads us into an even deeper question. If not recognition, then what? If not the applause of others, then what gives life meaning? Beyond ego, beyond validation, beyond comparison, what is the point of living, loving, striving? To answer this, we must turn now to the great human search for meaning, the quest to understand why we are here, and how Buddhist wisdom lights the way. Beneath stress, beneath anxiety, beneath the hunger for recognition, lies a deeper question. What is the meaning of all this? Why do we wake up each morning, chase after tasks, endure suffering, and celebrate joys that soon fade? What is the point of a life that ends in death, of achievements that crumble, of love that slips away with impermanence? This question haunts humanity, often unspoken yet always felt. Asterisk, some seek meaning in success. They tell themselves that building a career, earning wealth, or leaving a legacy will justify their existence. Others seek meaning in relationships, believing that being loved or raising a family will make life worthwhile. Still others seek it in philosophy, religion, or creativity, constructing stories, symbols, and works of art to explain the mystery. For a while, these pursuits bring comfort, but eventually, cracks appear. Success loses its shine, relationships falter, beliefs are questioned, and meaning once found slips away again. This cycle of seeking and losing meaning creates a subtle form of suffering. It is not as sharp as grief or as immediate as stress. It is quieter, more existential. A vague restlessness, a whisper that says, "Is this all there is?" Many people drown this whisper in distraction work, entertainment, consumption. But in the quiet moments, it returns. The Buddha addressed this directly. He did not offer a single grand meaning to life, no ultimate story that erases all doubt. Instead, he pointed to the nature of suffering itself and the possibility of liberation. He taught that the search for ultimate meaning often fuels suffering, because it assumes life must fit into a permanent story. But life is not a story. It is a flow of moments. Its meaning is not fixed. It is lived, breathed, experienced. This teaching may sound unsettling to those raised to believe in one ultimate purpose. Yet there is profound freedom in it. If meaning is not something to be discovered once and for all, then we are not failures for losing it. If meaning is not fixed, then it can be created here and now in each moment of awareness, compassion, and connection. The Buddha shifted the focus from why does life exist to how shall we live? Imagine standing at the ocean's edge. The waves rise and fall endlessly. To demand a single meaning from the ocean is impossible. But to swim, to feel the salt on your skin, to watch the horizon, this is to experience its truth. Life is the same. Its meaning is not in explanation, but in experience. To live with awareness is to discover meaning in every breath. This shift dissolves much of the restlessness. Instead of searching endlessly for one final answer, we discover countless small answers in daily life. Meaning in sharing a smile. Meaning in planting a tree. Meaning in sitting quietly with grief. Each act, lived fully, carries meaning, not because it will last forever, but because it is real in this moment. The Buddha also taught that meaning arises from the Four Noble Truths. Life contains suffering. Suffering arises from craving. there is an end to suffering. The path to that end is through ethical living, meditation, and wisdom. This is not meaning imposed from outside. It is meaning discovered through practice. To live this path is to transform suffering into awakening. Each step becomes meaningful because it leads to greater freedom. Modern life often distorts meaning by tying it to achievement. We are told that if we reach a certain status, earn a certain income, or buy certain things, our lives will matter. Yet countless people who achieve these goals still feel empty. The emptiness is not failure. It is evidence that external achievement cannot fill the deeper yearning. The Buddha would say, "You are searching in the wrong place. Look not outside, but within." This does not mean achievements or relationships are unimportant. They matter, but not as ultimate sources of meaning. They are conditions through which we practice. Work can be meaningful when done with awareness and compassion. Relationships can be meaningful when lived with presence and love. Even challenges can be meaningful when they teach patience and resilience. But none of these is permanent. Their meaning lies in the way we meet them, not in their ability to last forever. Consider the lotus flower, a symbol in Buddhism. It grows from the mud, through the water, into the air, and blossoms in the sunlight. Its beauty does not deny the mud, it arises because of it. Our lives are like this lotus. Meaning does not require avoiding suffering. It emerges from how we transform suffering into wisdom. The mud of stress, anxiety, and loss becomes the soil for compassion. The flower blooms not in spite of difficulty, but because of it. For some, this teaching feels liberating. For others, it feels incomplete. But still, they ask, what is the point? Why does any of this exist at all? The Buddha rarely answered such metaphysical questions. He compared them to being struck by a poisoned arrow. If a man insists on knowing who shot the arrow, what kind of wood it is made of, and why it was fired, he will die before receiving treatment. The wise focus instead on removing the arrow. In the same way, instead of demanding ultimate explanations, the Buddha invited us to focus on ending suffering here and now. This is not avoidance. It is practicality. The search for one ultimate meaning often distracts us from the living truth of the present. The mind races in circles, while life passes unnoticed. The Buddha's path redirects us. Breathe, walk, live with awareness. In this living, meaning is found not as a single answer, but as countless small awakenings. And so, the great search becomes simpler. We stop asking, what will make my life meaningful forever? And instead ask, what makes this moment meaningful now? This question changes everything. It shifts the search from endless dissatisfaction to present fulfillment. It opens the door to a life where every breath, every act, every connection matters, not because it endures, but because it is real. Yet, even as we embrace this perspective, another challenge arises. Living with awareness is not easy in a world filled with noise, speed, and distraction. The culture around us pulls us back into craving, competition, and endless searching. To sustain meaning in daily life, we need not only insight, but practice. And so, as we move forward, we turn to the ways Buddhist wisdom guides us to cultivate meaning in ordinary days, transforming the mundane into the sacred dot to cultivate meaning in daily life. Buddhist teachings offer practical tools. One of the most powerful is mindfulness, paying attention to the present moment without judgment. When we live mindfully, even the simplest acts become imbued with purpose. Washing dishes, walking to work, listening to a friend, each moment becomes a practice. Meaning is no longer something distant or abstract. It is immediate, accessible, alive. Another tool is ethical conduct. Living with integrity, speaking truthfully, acting with compassion. These choices shape our lives in profound ways. When our actions align with our values, we experience coherence. When our actions contradict our values, even small misalignments create stress and discontent. The Buddha's Eightfold Path provides guidance not as rigid rules, but as a framework for living meaningfully. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood transform everyday choices into a path of purpose. Meditation deepens this understanding. In meditation, we see the arising and passing of thoughts, emotions, and sensations. We notice how clinging, craving, and aversion create suffering. We observe the fleeting nature of pleasure, the inevitability of change. This insight is liberating. It does not strip life of joy. It allows joy to be experienced fully, without attachment. It does not erase sadness. It allows sorrow to be held without self-destruction. Through practice, meaning is discovered rather than invented. It is not imposed from ideology, culture, or expectation. It emerges from clarity. We begin to see that our lives matter not because of fame, wealth, or permanence, but because of awareness and compassion. Each act of kindness, each moment of attention, each breath of understanding is a thread in a tapestry that cannot be measured but is undeniably real. The Buddha emphasized interconnection. Our lives gain meaning not in isolation, but through relationships, through acts that touch others. Helping a neighbor, comforting a friend, mentoring a child, or even smiling at a stranger, these seemingly small gestures ripple outward. The ego often scoffs. Does it matter? The answer is that each act matters because it participates in the web of life. Meaning is found not in grand achievements alone, but in the everyday expressions of care and presence. Loss, impermanence, and suffering are inevitable, but they also deepen meaning. Grief teaches empathy. Difficulty cultivates resilience. Uncertainty fosters courage. Each challenge is an opportunity to practice presence, compassion, and wisdom. To live meaningfully is not to avoid hardship, but to engage with life fully, embracing its dualities. One practice for this is reflection. Each evening, we can review the day. Where did I act with awareness? Where did I act with compassion? Where did I allow ego, fear, or craving to dominate? Reflection is not self-criticism. It is a gentle examination. It illuminates patterns, reinforces understanding, and guides us to live more consciously tomorrow. Gratitude complements reflection. Even in difficult days, noticing what is present breath, food, friendship, beauty grounds the mind. Gratitude counters the constant narrative of not enough. It reminds us that meaning does not require perfection or abundance. It arises naturally when we recognize the value of this moment, of this life, as it is. Asterisk still, the human mind is restless. We often seek grand meaning in achievements, fame, or milestones. The Buddha invites us to shift the focus from distant rewards to immediate engagement. Life is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a canvas to be painted, a garden to be tended, a conversation to be lived. Each choice, each action, each encounter carries significance when approached with awareness and intention. Consider a teacher with many students. One day, a student asks, "Why do you teach? Will it make a difference?" The teacher responds, "I plant seeds, not knowing which will grow. Some may bloom in days, others in decades, some not at all. My work is to plant, water, and care. The rest is beyond me." Meaning, the teacher shows, is not in the guarantee of outcome, but in the attentive act itself. Similarly, our lives gain meaning in the practice of presence. Each interaction, each effort, each compassionate act is a seed planted. The result may not be immediate or visible, but it contributes to the larger fabric of life. In this way, meaning is not a goal to be achieved, but a byproduct of mindful living. The Buddha also taught the importance of letting go of rigid expectations. When we attach meaning to specific outcomes, disappointment and suffering follow inevitably. We expect a promotion, a relationship, a result. When these expectations fail, we feel lost, empty, or resentful. Letting go does not imply passivity. It implies flexibility and openness, allowing life to unfold without clinging. Meaning becomes adaptive, not fixed, flowing with the changing conditions of life. Even the contemplation of death deepens meaning. Awareness of mortality is not morbid. It is clarifying. Knowing that life is finite, each moment gains urgency and preciousness. We choose love, attention, and ethical action, not for permanence, but for the depth of experience. Death is a teacher, reminding us that meaning is found in the engagement of life, not in abstract guarantees. Finally, meaning is intertwined with compassion for all beings. The search for personal purpose deepens when we extend concern beyond ourselves. By alleviating suffering in others, we create a resonance that transcends ego and temporal limits. A life dedicated to the well-being of others, even in small ways, is rich with meaning because it participates in the larger flow of life, in the web of connection that sustains us all. This insight transforms daily experience. Cooking a meal, cleaning a home, teaching a child, listening to a friend, none of these may seem profound, yet each carries the potential for significance when approached with awareness, intention, and compassion. The mundane becomes sacred. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. The fleeting becomes eternal in its impact. Through these practices, mindfulness, ethical conduct, meditation, reflection, gratitude, letting go, compassion, we discover a meaning that is resilient. It does not depend on permanence, recognition, or outcomes. It is present here and now, in every conscious breath, in every act of kindness, in every moment of awareness. Meaning becomes not a distant goal, but a living reality, accessible in the simplest experiences of life. And so, the search for meaning, once a source of anxiety, becomes a source of liberation. The restless questioning softens. The urge for validation diminishes. The ego's hunger for recognition no longer dictates our actions. Instead, life itself, moments, relationships, presence reveals its inherent significance. From here, the final step on this journey emerges naturally. We have explored stress, overthinking, anxiety, craving, impermanence, ego, and meaning. Each section has shown a path from suffering to awareness, from grasping to release, from distraction to clarity. The culmination of these teachings is the practice of integration, living fully, moment to moment, in freedom, presence, and compassion. As we reach the final chapter of this journey, a sense of fullness emerges. We have explored the restless currents of overthinking, the weight of stress, the turbulence of relationships, the shadow of anxiety, the craving for control, the clutter of the mind, the inevitability of impermanence, the hunger for recognition, and the human search for meaning. Each of these challenges is part of life. Each has been shown not as a condemnation, but as an invitation, a doorway to awareness, presence, and freedom. The culmination of these teachings is integration. It is not enough to understand each principle individually. To live fully, we must weave them together. Awareness without compassion becomes cold. Compassion without clarity becomes indulgent. Mindfulness without reflection becomes routine. Reflection without gratitude becomes sterile. The path of wisdom lies in the union of these practices, in their daily embodiment, in the rhythm of life itself. Integration begins with the breath. Breath is the simplest and most powerful anchor to the present moment. No matter how turbulent the mind, the breath remains. Inhale, exhale. In these simple acts, life reveals itself fully. Awareness of the breath connects body and mind, intention and action, suffering and release. Even amidst chaos, the breath is a refuge, a reminder that presence is always available, From the breath, we extend awareness outward. Each moment presents an opportunity to act with clarity, compassion, and intention. Washing dishes becomes meditation. Listening to a friend becomes an act of love. Walking down a crowded street becomes a practice in mindfulness. Life itself transforms into a classroom, a stage, a garden of awakening. Every task, no matter how mundane, carries potential for meaning. Presence and awareness allow us to meet suffering without resistance. Stress may arise, but we do not have to be crushed. Anxiety may surge, but we can observe it like a passing wave. Loss may sting, but we recognize that impermanence is the natural rhythm of existence. The mind, once cluttered with worry, desire, and comparison, gradually settles like mud in a pond, revealing clarity beneath. Compassion is inseparable from awareness. To truly integrate the lessons of this journey, we must see beyond ourselves. Others suffer just as we do. Others crave recognition just as we do. Others fear impermanence just as we do. When we see this, judgment softens. Anger fades. Connection deepens. Compassion becomes not a practiced act, but the natural expression of understanding. Ethical living grounds this integration. Choices aligned with kindness, honesty, and generosity create harmony both within and without. Right speech prevents unnecessary conflict. Right action nurtures trust and stability. Right livelihood allows us to participate in the world without causing harm. Each choice, though small, is a thread in the tapestry of a meaningful life. Gratitude and contentment provide balance. Recognizing what is present, what is enough, we release the endless chase for more. The mind stops measuring constantly, comparing endlessly, craving perpetually. Instead, it rests in sufficiency, in the awareness that this moment, this breath, this life is already complete in its own way. Contentment does not mean passivity. It is active recognition of what matters. Allowing energy to be directed wisely. Integration also involves letting go. Letting go of overthinking, letting go of fear, letting go of craving, letting go of attachment to permanence and identity. This does not mean abandoning life or ambition. It means releasing the grip that causes suffering. A river of life flows naturally. Resisting it only creates turbulence. Surrender to the flow does not weaken action. It strengthens it, because actions arise from clarity, not compulsion. Impermanence, when fully embraced, enriches integration. Knowing that every moment is fleeting, we treat it with care. Love is given fully. Work is undertaken with dedication, and presence is prioritized over distraction. Death, loss, and change are no longer threats, but reminders to live deeply in the time we have. Every interaction, every breath, every choice gains significance. The ego, too, is softened in this integrated life. Recognition is no longer demanded. Approval is no longer a measure of worth. Achievements and accolades are appreciated, but not clung to. Identity becomes fluid, flexible, and expansive. Self is no longer a prison, but a channel for awareness, compassion, and action. Freedom arises naturally when the need for validation dissolves. Meaning emerges organically. It is not something to grasp, but something to live. Each act of kindness, each practice of mindfulness, each moment of presence contributes to a life that is rich and whole. The pursuit of meaning transforms from an anxious quest into the natural expression of living fully. The ordinary is recognized as extraordinary. Every moment, however fleeting, carries significance. Integration is practiced daily. It is not achieved once, but cultivated continuously. Each day presents opportunities to embody awareness, compassion, ethical living, gratitude, contentment, presence, and wisdom. Mistakes and lapses will occur, but they are not failures. They are opportunities to practice again, to return to awareness, to deepen understanding. Community. 2 supports integration. Relationships become mirrors of practice. Friends, family, colleagues, and even strangers provide opportunities to exercise compassion, patience, and understanding. Conflicts become lessons. Disagreements become practices in humility, and connection becomes a reflection of the heart's growth. We see that the path is not walked alone, but in communion with others. Finally, integration recognizes the continuity of life. Though individual existence is impermanent, the impact of awareness, compassion, and ethical action continues beyond what we can measure. Small gestures ripple outward. Kindness touches others, often in ways unseen. Wisdom inspires action, sometimes generations later. Meaning is found not only in immediate experience, but in the resonance our lives create in the larger flow of existence. In this fully integrated life, the challenges that once seemed insurmountable, stress, overthinking, anxiety, craving, impermanence, loss, ego, and the search for meaning are transformed. They are no longer chains that bind us. They become teachers, reminders, and opportunities for practice. Life is embraced in its entirety, with clarity, with compassion, and with presence. And as we move through each moment, we see that freedom is not somewhere in the future. It is here, now, in the breath, in awareness, in connection. Every moment is an invitation to live fully, to love fully, to act wisely, to rest in the truth of being. As we bring all the threads together, a profound simplicity emerges. The challenges we face, stress, overthinking, anxiety, craving, loss, impermanence, ego, and the search for meaning are no longer isolated burdens. They are part of the tapestry of life, woven together to teach awareness, presence, and compassion. Each challenge points to the same truth. Peace is not found outside, but within. It is cultivated, not acquired. The journey begins in the ordinary moments. We awaken to the breath, to the body, to the sensations of the present. We notice thoughts arise and fall, emotions surge and fade, and we learn to observe without clinging. From this foundation, the wisdom of each lesson unfolds naturally. Stress becomes manageable. Anxiety becomes a teacher. Relationships become mirrors of compassion. Craving softens into contentment. Recognition loses its power to dominate. Impermanence becomes a source of depth rather than fear. Meaning arises in each conscious act. In practical terms, integration looks like this: a mindful morning, a conscious pause before reacting, a gentle choice instead of a habitual response. It is noticing the sound of rain, the warmth of a smile, the rhythm of a heartbeat. It is acting with intention rather than habit, giving freely rather than demanding, speaking truthfully rather than repeating mental patterns. Every small decision becomes a practice, every action a chance to embody awareness. Gratitude and generosity anchor the heart. By appreciating what is present and offering care without expectation, the mind becomes lighter. Suffering is not erased, but it is transformed. We still feel pain, still face loss, still encounter uncertainty, but these experiences are held with openness rather than resistance. The heart expands to include both joy and sorrow. Peace is discovered not in avoiding life, but in meeting it fully. Compassion extends naturally outward. When we understand our own suffering, we see the suffering of others with clarity. We recognize the universality of pain, the common humanity in struggle. Compassion does not require perfection. It requires presence. We offer help where we can, patience when we cannot, and understanding always. By connecting with others in this way, the ego relaxes and recognition becomes unnecessary. We are no longer seeking proof of worth because we live in the truth of our being. The awareness of impermanence deepens all experiences. We savor moments because they are fleeting. We love fully because attachment is tempered by understanding. And we act wisely because each opportunity is precious. Death and change are not enemies, they are teachers. They remind us to engage with life, to value what is here, to breathe, to smile, to listen, to act. In impermanence, presence becomes our guide. Letting go is central to this final integration. Letting go of control, of judgment, of fear, of the need for permanence. Letting go of attachment to identity, to recognition, to outcomes. Each act of release is a small liberation, a step toward freedom. When we let go, we discover spaciousness, space to breathe, space to live, space to love. The mind unclutters itself, the heart opens, and life flows with a newfound ease. Meaning is realized not as an answer to an abstract question, but as the lived experience of each moment. Every act of awareness, every compassionate gesture, every mindful breath is imbued with significance. Life does not need to be explained, measured, or justified. It is already meaningful if we choose to notice it. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. The mundane becomes sacred. Through all these practices, the self itself is transformed. Ego is softened, no longer a tyrant demanding recognition. Identity becomes fluid, flexible, and resilient. We act with authenticity, not as a performance for others, but as an expression of being fully present. Freedom is not somewhere far away. It is in the now, in the breath, in the choices we make moment by moment. This integration does not eliminate challenges. Stress may arise, anxiety may return, loss will come, and uncertainty will persist. Yet the difference lies in our relationship to these experiences. They no longer define us or control us. They become the soil in which wisdom, compassion, and presence grow. We meet life fully, without resistance, with openness and equanimity. The culmination of this journey is profound simplicity. Live consciously, love freely, act wisely, and rest in awareness. Life is not about solving every problem or achieving perfection. It is about participation, breathing, observing, feeling, acting with clarity and compassion. The small moments, repeated endlessly, form the fabric of a life well lived. Let us imagine the life of one who walks this path, rising in the morning with gratitude, noticing the breath, offering kindness without expectation, working with awareness, pausing amidst difficulties, embracing change with openness, sleeping with a mind at peace. Each day is complete in itself, not because nothing goes wrong, but because the heart is aligned with truth. Joy is present, sorrow is acknowledged, and each moment is a teacher. In this life, relationships are transformed. Conflict is met with understanding, love is expressed without clinging, and connection deepens through presence. There is no need for constant validation, no grasping for permanence, no fear of impermanence. The freedom gained is not theoretical, it is lived. Every smile, every conversation, every act of service, every mindful breath carries the weight of awakened awareness. And finally, there is hope. Not a hope that life will be free of difficulty, but a hope grounded in understanding. Life is precious, fragile, and fleeting. Suffering is real, but liberation is possible. Each moment offers a choice to cling and suffer, or to release and live fully. The path of awareness, compassion, and presence is open to all who seek it. It does not require wealth, status, or special circumstance. It only requires attention, intention, and practice. As this journey comes to a close, the invitation remains. Breathe, notice, release, love. Walk lightly on the path, for every step matters. Speak kindly, act consciously, and rest in the clarity that is always present beneath the noise of the mind. Life itself is the teacher, and every moment offers the opportunity to awaken through the lessons of stress, anxiety, craving, impermanence, ego, and meaning. We see a coherent path emerge. integration of awareness into daily life. The mind becomes a lake, clear and still. The heart becomes a source of compassion, deep and resilient. The self becomes a flowing river, connected and free. Each of us can embody this truth in our own way, in our own time. Let us end here with gentle encouragement. The journey is ongoing. Each day is a chance to practice again, to awaken again, to release again. There is no final moment of perfection, only the continuous unfolding of presence. In this unfolding, freedom, clarity, compassion, and meaning are available, always here, always now. This marks the completion of the full journey. All 10 parts, totaling 40,000 words, have been written, integrating Buddhist wisdom with modern life, offering guidance for stress, overthinking, relationships, anxiety, craving, impermanence, ego, and the search for meaning.